Welcome, everybody. We're here to talk about digital resilience, elevating your data protection best practices from Nutanix and HYCU. I'm Dan Angst, the Worldwide Director and Category Lead for Nutanix Unified Storage. We have Mark Nijmeijer, Senior Director of Product Management at HYCU, and Harmail Chatha, the Senior Director of Global Cloud Ops at Nutanix IT. A good base for protecting from cybersecurity is HCI, because you make it more simple, you make it more secure. It removes complexity out of everything, and we have all of our native security features. We start with secure development, a hardened platform that's self-healing, and then add the native controls of built-in encryption, data governance, micro-segmentation with Flow, and then we add our Nutanix-ready ecosystem. Layer 7 security with IDS, IPS, and deep packet inspection with Palo Alto and Cisco, anti-malware, and data protection with HYCU. We really like to look at the NIST cybersecurity framework. But on top of that, with our robust industry certifications, like the Department of Defense, we're on the approved price list. We're the only HCI company on that approved price list. So let's look at identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. For identifying, this is vulnerability scanning and patching. This is actually great with the Prism security dashboard, where we can actually see the vulnerabilities, not just with Nutanix, but with our guest VMs and with the hardware. Kind of interesting, because this leads to one of our subjects today that we're going to talk about, is the CrowdStrike incident that just happened, where we want to do our security patches, but sometimes they can cause big problems. Then we want to protect, like STIG hardening and RBAC, network segmentation, and like I said, micro-segmentation with Flow. This really helps a lot with protecting, along with our unstructured data worm capabilities with Nutanix Files and our Nutanix objects. Then we detect, and one of my favorite new products that we've had out for about a year now is Nutanix Data Lens. Data Lens gives us the ability with ransomware protection with over 5,000 signatures plus anomaly detection. So we have the visibility of what's going on in our data center, and with that visibility, it gives us knowledge of everything going on. Knowledge is power. But what gives us a superpower is being able to respond and recover from all these incidents. With responding and recover, we do file blocking, session blocking, remediation policies, and then recovering. That's when we bring in HYCU. So Mark, we've talked about how important defense in depth is. Let's talk about HYCU and how important that data protection is with HYCU. And let's, especially with that latest problem that we had with CrowdStrike. What do you think?
Yeah, that was an interesting one, right? You wake up on Friday morning and you see news reports saying lots of blue screens of death and so on. And so we actually had a busy day ourselves as well at HYCU, working with our customers to recover. And it really shows that having like you said, a robust strategy around disaster recovery and so on is very important. I always talk, when I talk to customers, I always talk about it has to be a multi-layered approach. Like you said, there's many layers in the cake basically that you have to have in place to detect. But in the end, it's not a question of if something happens, it's a question of when something happens, right? But if you have your strategies in place, you can make it relatively painless when something happens in your organization. Backup, especially backup on storage that is worm-enabled, right? Meaning nobody can change storage after it's been written, meaning your backups are unmodifiable, nobody can delete them, nobody can encrypt them, is kind of that last line of defense, right? If you have a backup that is sitting somewhere outside of your data center that is worm-enabled, that might be encrypted as well, is very important. But completely agree with you, it has to be a multi-layered approach. And we do the same at HYCU as well, like what you were talking about, security. The way we deploy is very simple. Just like Nutanix is simple to deploy, simple to manage. It's a virtual appliance, Linux-based, it's hardened. We have a lot, just like you, we have a lot of customers in the federal sector and so on. So security is of course top of mind for them, and we help them. We help them get there. Just like Nutanix, we have a very high NPS score as well. Ours has been above 90 ever since we started measuring it and so on. And that kind of reflects on how we work together with Nutanix as well. We're always in lockstep with new features, new functionalities. We want to be the first one to protect and basically integrate with new features and functionalities that Nutanix is working on, like Nutanix Objects, you remember. We did a lot of co-development around Nutanix Files with CFT. We did do some co-development around that. So we try to be as much integrated with Nutanix as is humanly possible, I would say.
That's great. You know, you brought up a good point that I like to bring up when I talk to customers, especially about backup. There's a lot of backup vendors out there.
Yes.
A lot of backup vendors and now call themselves security vendors.
Yes.
But they don't have the tight integration and joint development that Nutanix and HYCU have for how many years now?
It started back in 2016, so it's been about 8 years since we started working together on this. 2017, the product came out, and so we've basically been in lockstep. We're on version 5 of the product right now on our side, right? So you can see speed of development, but also quality of development is very, very important to us.
That's great.
Yep.
With what happened with CrowdStrike, you know, we always say we have to protect against natural disasters, kind of like what's going on the East Coast right now with what is it, Hurricane Debbie. But also, you know, we do these patches and nobody expected what happened, especially with Microsoft. In fact, I was on that Friday, I was going to make reservations at a restaurant and they had a big screen there, and I looked at it and I just started laughing because it was the blue screen of death sitting there right in front of me. And I'm like going, wow, what is it, almost $5 billion that corporations lost because they didn't have a plan and they didn't test those plans for backup, business continuity, and disaster recovery. Which kind of brings me next to Harmail. We've talked a lot about a lot of these things, ransomware, backup, disaster recovery, but you have to day to day put this into action. You have to deal with the evolving landscape of security, of disasters, and everything like that. How do you approach this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Just to kind of like emphasize the CrowdStrike situation, obviously a great company, huge customer base, huge market penetration, but obviously they've got some flaws in the process as well, right? And what we inherently talk about, preach, and live by at Nutanix is the crawl, walk, run concept as well, right? Canary deployment cycles type of a deal where you're able to gauge an issue might arise on a smaller scale versus doing a large scale rollout, something similar that CrowdStrike has done as well, right? Having a blue-green environment type deployments as well. So really what we do is we'll have a grand OCO project that we want to roll out, but you have to gauge what is the impact if something does go wrong, similar to CrowdStrike in itself, right? Literally took out half of the world, 3/4 of the world, people stuck at airports for days and out. Everything literally came to a stop. And for us at Nutanix as well, I mean, we've got a large customer base. They're running important workloads on our platform as well. So when we're doing releases, whether it's internally, which we're considered customer zero at Nutanix, is we have a staging environment that will first roll it out, and then we'll kind of roll it out to our clusters that are low priority because all our clusters are tiered 1, 2, 3, with tier 3 being the lowest, and then tier 2 medium, and tier 1 being the most critical as well. So what we try to do is kind of protect that blast radius in itself as well, right? So just continually keeping in mind that, you know, it's great to have velocity when you're doing work, but it's also about quality of the work in itself as well. What's the impact going to be if something like CrowdStrike situation were to go wrong? So we kind of focus on that, take a more programmatic approach to rollouts and updates as well.
So interesting, because we have a joint customer here too with HYCU and Nutanix. It happens to be Nutanix IT.
Yep.
what has been your experience over the years with using HYCU for this backup and recovery? And we both have MPI scores over 90. Are you experiencing that as well?
Yes, absolutely. So Nutanix IT.
That's the right answer.
Nutanix IT actually has an NPS score of 90 plus as well internally.
Nice.
So we're all in sync there. But the partnership with HYCU goes back to Mark's point since 2017, and really what it's done for us and what Nutanix is all about is simplicity. For Nutanix IT is we live and breathe the Nutanix ecosystem. So what we call is Nutanix on Nutanix. So literally all of our production environments internally leverage the Nutanix platform, hardware agnostic, whatever hardware vendor we choose. But at the top tier of it, it's all AOS, AHV, PC, and the great relationship that we built with HYCU and HYCU kind of embracing our ecosystem and really designing the product for our ecosystem has really led to us running our operations much more simpler, right? Okay. We don't have to go out and vet out other vendors. They're already qualified, validated within the Nutanix ecosystem. So for my team specifically, it's just really helped embracing the product, deploying the product, and being able to leverage the product. To Mark's point earlier is like for NUS, for example, NDB, just try to manage the snapshots much more. Worm is an example of that, right? Just whatever the offering that HYCU offers, we've been able to implement it much more quickly, efficiently, and start to reap the benefits of it as well, right?
You brought up something good there as snapshots, and I want to take a little deeper dive into that. So I really think some of the biggest challenges customer facing becoming resilient is they actually have to have a plan. I talk to a lot of customers, I'm sure you do as well, Mark, and I asked them, what is your business continuity disaster recovery plan? They were like, oh, we're formulating it. I was like, you guys have been around a long time. You might want to think hard about that. There's the old joke about, a person traveling in New York City. It's like, so how do I get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. Well, I think this is have a plan and test, test, test. So Mark, with snapshots and testing, let me get your point of view and when you talk to customers on how important that is and how they're doing that in practice.
Yeah, so before I go into all of that, we have a similar saying on the backup side. Backup is easy, restore is the hard part.
Okay.
Right? And it comes back down to your point. You have to test things out. Right? Yes, you can have backups, and it's great to have automated backups that just run and allow your teams to focus on business problems and so on, rather than keeping the infrastructure, the lights on and things like that. But in the end, you need to have a test plan. You need to have executed a test plan to make sure that you have all the processes in place, all the approval chains in place, that you can quickly respond to things. And the way we work with the Nutanix technology really helps there, right? Another saying in backup is a snapshot is not a backup, right? But they definitely work together, right? Because the way HYCU technology integrates with the Nutanix snapshots is kind of unique. We leave snapshots on the Nutanix cluster so we can do very fast recovery. Right, we can recover from a snapshot rather than having to go out to another storage and pull up all of the data in. Of course, we do that as well. We can store on Nutanix objects, for instance, on-prem. We can tier into the cloud, so you have this 3-2-1 rule, right, that everybody's talking about in the backup world. But in the end, whatever you do, you need to be able to go to sleep at night and be able to know that you can respond to things.
Well, how important is this, especially with that incident with CrowdStrike and 911 around the country and around the world was down, and if they had a plan and they did their snapshots and had backup and tested it, they could have been back up and running within hours, if not minutes. Harmail, how do you put this in practice at Nutanix? How big is your staff that you have to do this? Because it should be simple to do.
Just to put this back in perspective and correlate back to the CrowdStrike situation that occurred, it's important for a company to have a BCP plan versus just a DR plan, right? A DR is more IT-centric, focused on services and infrastructure, versus BCP is more overarching at an organizational level, right? So what we do here at Nutanix is really work with a third-party vendor rather than just trying to solve the problem internally. Work with the vendor to devise our BCP plan, right? And that focuses on a few areas, but more broadly engages different business functions, different teams, including executives, so we can formalize parts of the plan that equate to each area, right? So business risk analysis. If something like CrowdStrike were to happen, or something like the AT&T situation, or here in the Bay Area, one of the banks had a ransomware attack within the last couple of weeks as well, is really gauging what is the situation and formulating a plan around that, right? How do we react to it, right? So business risk analysis. Then you really need is a response to that as well, right? What is the communication strategy depending on the situation? And the bank situation here really didn't have a communication strategy. A lot of their customers weren't able to access any of their funds, pay their bills. They didn't even know what was going on, right? So the communication lag wasn't there. It's also about operationally having a committee in place as well, right? One could be that communication committee. The other one is having the technical committee in place as well. It's ensuring that you have partners in place for different risk involved. You know, when an incident is happening, that is not the time to go out and vet out vendors. Who can help with this? Who can help with that? And if your systems are down, you're not gonna be able to onboard that vendor to even pay them, right? So it's also having that operational excellence. And then ultimately, it's about training and testing. Going back to the conversation of having backups isn't sufficient. You got to test the restore of the backups as well, right? So training, continue the communication, and it really is an exercise that's done annually versus one and done type of a deal. So we take it from that perspective. Our DR is completely separate, more IT-centric, but BCP is definitely at an organizational level.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. Thanks for that input. Yeah.
I have something to add to that, and I'm glad that you bring that up, right? Because if you look at the way your role has evolved over the last 20, 10, 5 years, right? It's getting broader and broader.
Right.
There's more and more data, not only within your data center, but also outside of your data center, right? There might be applications running within Nutanix that you don't even know about. Right? Stuff in marketing, stuff in sales, they just pay for it on a credit card, or it gets expensed somewhere and so on. You also need to think about how you're going to protect that data. Right? What happens if that vendor goes away, and how do you recover from that? Or somebody goes in and deletes something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's having a software asset management philosophy in place as well. A conversation I just got out of right now, the whole industry is ecstatic about AI. And for example, Zoom's got their AI companion as well. Well, where's that data stored? What is their retention policy? What if they were to get hacked? And whether it's just, the conversation that AI is recording, or the voice recordings as well. And then there's other companies doing something similar as well. And you got to start to protect that data, and then putting a policy in place and a plan in place for that as well.
Exactly. A lot of the SaaS companies, they of course have resiliency built into their platform and so on. But what we've found at HYCU is that while they have those resiliency features, if you go in with your account and you start deleting something, or somebody goes in with their account and start deleting something, they're not going to help you recover from that. Right. So we have built about, what is now 65 different integrations with SaaS vendors to help you recover from accidental or malicious deletions and so on. So this is one of those things I think is really cool to see in the industry. It's getting broader and broader and broader, right?
You answered a question I was going to have for you. It's like, so how does HYCU deal with this? Well, thank you for that answer.
Sorry if too.
No, a little artificial intelligence happening there. So let's bring this home now, and this is how I see what should be included in a BCDR plan. The plan should provide a process to recover from a wide range of disasters, like CrowdStrike, like ransomware, malware, like a hurricane or a fire, and make sure that everything can come back to a state before that and the business is running without costing the business too much money.
Yeah.
What are your views on that?
Completely agree, right? In the end, yeah, you need to have the plan, you need to have the testing and so on,
Okay.
because you want to keep your job, in the end, you want to keep it simple, right? You want to keep it so you can go to sleep at night and so on. And yeah, like I said, we really see HYCU as that last line of defense. But of course, we help in other areas as well with detection, anomaly detection, right? Flag things. It's like, oh, all of a sudden there's a huge change rate on a particular database or a particular virtual machine or a particular SaaS service, things like that, right? So I think some of those layers, they might start blurring a little bit over time, but because we're working so well together, I think there's a lot of extra value, especially with AI coming in. There's a lot of extra value that we can build together. So I'm very, very excited about that.
Well, Harmail, your job depends on this happening and having a plan. So anything else to add?
So Dan, my job at Nutanix is actually fairly easy when it comes to backups. Just because we live within the Nutanix ecosystem, we're partners with HYCU. We have data center backup strategies and resiliency strategies, but now our life's gotten even easier because we're hybrid multi-cloud as well, right? We can have our data in a primary data center on premise, leveraging HYCU. We can have it backed up into NC2 and AWS or Azure as well. So really for us one is just ensuring that we're backing up the correct data, what we call crown jewels, right? So having that understanding of what needs to be backed up and then going back and testing that as well. To Mark's point earlier, now we have so many SaaS applications and other applications, is ensuring that the landscape, the blast radius from that perspective is covered as well. And then really going back to the testing side of it as well, making sure the backups are tested, we're getting the right data. And the bigger component for us actually, and I'm sure customers as well, is making sure that we don't have any legacy tech debt as well, right? So keeping our infrastructure and services up to date is a key component of our strategy from a security perspective and a backup perspective as well.
Great. Thank you for all the great input. And by the way, I want to give Nutanix IT a big thumbs up because I'm a user, I'm one of your customers, and you guys do a great job, even in getting us a little clicker to help us here today. And Mark, thank you. Mark and I have worked together a long time. But I don't know what the acronym HYCU stands for. Can you tell us?
Sure. HYCU stands for Hybrid Cloud Uptime.
Thanks, Mark. Learn something every day. Having a secure cloud platform like Nutanix, along with HYCU for our backup and digital resilience, is really key to all of our customers' success. Thank you.